The town, usually peaceful and idyllic, seems almost too perfect. The rustling leaves and distant chirps of crickets create a calm that contrasts sharply with the unsettling energy that's starting to pulse through the air. The long shadows stretch over the quaint houses, their windows dark, hiding the secrets of what lies within. Something's wrong in Oakwood, something beneath the surface, waiting to surface. At 38, Sheriff Ununice Blackburn is Oakwood's youngest and first female sheriff. She's built a reputation for being tough, respected, and unwavering in her commitment to the town. But behind her confident eyes is a woman struggling to balance the pressure of her badge with the weight of her personal life. Ununice knows that her career has come at a cost. Her marriage to Caleb, the love of her life, has become strained. And tonight, as she returns home, she can feel the tension rising like a storm on the horizon. Ununice patrol car pulls to a stop in front of her house. She exhales deeply, hoping for a quiet night. But just as she steps out, a soft, almost inaudible rustle breaks the silence, like a whisper carried on the wind. It's strange, out of place in the usual serenity of Oakwood. Her body stiffens, her instincts kicking in. Every fiber of her being tells her that something isn't right. That sound, it's a warning. Her hand hesitates over the door as a creeping fear takes hold. What could it be? Is it the wind? Or is someone or something waiting for her hidden in the shadows? The hairs on the back of her neck rise, the feeling growing stronger as she steps toward the door, every sound now amplified. Ununice's heart pounds in her chest. She knows the peace of this town is about to shatter forever. The question is, will she be ready for what's inside? Ununice Blackburn's patrol car hummed to a halt outside the familiar red-bricked house that had once been her sanctuary, her place of refuge after a grueling day of keeping the peace in the small town of Oakwood, Michigan. Her tired eyes scanned the street, the fading daylight casting long shadows across the sidewalks. The sun's slow descent brought with it a sense of calm, the kind of serenity that Ununice had come to expect from her little corner of the world. Yet tonight, something felt different. The cool Michigan breeze tugged at her uniform as she stepped out of the car. A quiet sigh escaped her lips, the exhaustion of a double shift weighing heavily on her. The thought of slipping into her comfortable home, perhaps having a warm meal, and finally escaping the pressures of her badge made her shoulders relax for a fleeting moment. She reached the keys in her pocket, ready to shut out the world for a few hours, only to feel an unexpected chill run up her spine. As she made her way up the front path, the door creaked open on its own, a soft squeal of hinges. At the same moment, Mrs. Henderson, the elderly neighbor, appeared at the edge of her yard, watering her garden. Mrs. Henderson, always so composed and chatty, looked up at the start as if she hadn't seen Ununice approaching. Her hand froze on the hose, droplets of water glistening in the air like pearls in the dying light. "Evening, Sheriff," Mrs. Henderson called out, her voice a bit too high-pitched, too quick. Ununice, trying to shake off the lingering fatigue, smiled back, offering a casual wave. "Evening, Mrs. Henderson. How's the garden?" For a brief moment, Mrs. Henderson's eyes locked with hers, and then just as quickly, they darted away, her gaze dropping to the ground. That fleeting second, so subtle, seemed like an eternity to Ununice. The hairs on the back of her neck tingled. It wasn't the look of a friendly neighbor, but something deeper, something guarded. Ununice knew that look well, the kind that only someone who had witnessed something they shouldn't had. But before she could make sense of it, Mrs. Henderson turned her face upward with a nervous, strained smile. "Lovely evening, isn't it? I hope you have a pleasant night, Sheriff. Best not to work too hard." Something about the way she said it, so abrupt yet laced with an undertone of caution, pulled at Ununice's instincts. She had spent years on the force, and her gut had never failed her. Mrs. Henderson's voice quivered, her hand shaking ever so slightly as she set the hose down. Ununice was no stranger to tension, but this was different. "I'll be sure to," Ununice replied, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. There was a subtle shift in Mrs. Henderson's posture, a tell one Ununice couldn't ignore. The woman seemed to hurry inside her house, almost as if trying to escape the moment. As the door shut behind her, Ununice stood there for a moment, her keys still in her hand. A breeze picked up, rustling the trees along the street. Everything felt too quiet. The soft thrum of the wind couldn't mask the unease settling in her chest. Why had Mrs. Henderson reacted like that? Why the sudden shift in her demeanor? The words she had spoken, so innocent, so polite, echoed in Ununice's mind, but it wasn't the words that bothered her. It was a feeling that something had been left unsaid, something hiding beneath the surface. Had she seen something? Heard something? Ununice could hardly shake the feeling that her neighbor knew something she wasn't telling her. Her gut told her to investigate, to question Mrs. Henderson further, but fatigue pushed her forward instead. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just the exhaustion talking, or maybe she was reading too much into the smallest details. But Ununice couldn't ignore the knot in her stomach that refused to loosen. She stepped toward her door, the familiar weight of her badge still hanging around her neck. But it didn't offer her the comfort it once did. The door was cracked slightly, just enough for her to feel the unsettling chill from inside. Her hand lingered on the doorknob, the brief interaction with Mrs. Henderson playing on a loop in her mind. The house, once a place of warmth and security, felt suddenly foreign. What had been waiting for her inside? Was it simply the comfort she longed for? Or was there something more, something darker, lurking just out of sight? With a deep breath, Ununice turned the knob, pushing the door open with a creak that echoed in the quiet of the evening. The air inside was cooler than expected, the silence almost suffocating. But before she could even take a step forward, the unsettling feeling she had dismissed earlier that night began to settle into the pit of her stomach. As she stood at the threshold, her mind raced. What was happening in Oakwood that she hadn't seen? What had Mrs. Henderson been? The door is cool to the touch as Ununice's fingers wrap around the handle. Her thumb presses into the polished wood, the weight of the moment sinking into her chest. The rhythmic thrum of her heartbeat fills her ears, almost drowning out the world around her. There's something in the air tonight, a tension she can't escape, no matter how hard she tries. Her eyes flicker toward the darkening hallway ahead. The house is eerily quiet, the stillness palpable. Everything feels off. And then, a soft thump. At first, Ununice dismisses it, brushing it off as a stray noise from the old house settling. But then it's followed by something else, an almost imperceptible moan. Her breath catches in her throat. A shiver crawls up her spine, instinctively making her step back. The hairs on the back of her neck stand at attention. This isn't the house she knows. No, this feels like a stranger's house. This is unfamiliar, alien, like something has shifted beneath the surface. She turns her head, scanning the quiet street behind her. The pale light of the street lamps flickers softly, casting long shadows across the lawn. Oakwood's usual peaceful serenity now seems haunting, the world outside too far removed from what she's about to face inside. Her hand remains frozen on the door handle. Ununice's mind races. Was it a mistake to come home? Was this just a case of a creaking floorboard, a house settling, or was there something more? Suddenly, the words from earlier today, whispered at the diner, invade her thoughts. "Caleb's been acting strange," they said. The words had floated through the air like idle gossip, the type of small-town rumor Ununice would have brushed aside without a second thought. After all, Oakwood was a town of secrets, and every whisper seemed to blow away like the wind. But today, something had felt different about those words. It was as if they'd been carrying a weight, one that Ununice hadn't understood at the time. Something about Caleb's name had stirred the air, shifted the energy in the room. A nagging sensation she had dismissed that now clawed its way into her consciousness. Her eyes tighten and her jaw clenches. Could it be? Could Caleb, the man she'd known for so many years, be hiding something from her? Could it be something that would destroy everything she thought she knew about him, about their marriage? The moan from inside becomes louder now, more distinct. Ununice's pulse quickens, thudding in her ears, the sound growing with every beat. This isn't just a creak in the floorboards. It's something worse, something deliberate. Her body reacts before her mind fully processes the implications. She steps away from the door, inching closer to the shadows of the hallway. Her mind flashes back to the evening she and Caleb had shared earlier in the week. He had been quiet, distant, even, he said little about his day, brushing off her attempts to connect. His gaze had seemed vacant, but she didn't push. Maybe he had just been tired. After all, everyone has their off days. Yet now, the quiet moments of doubt begin to build a picture she'd been too afraid to see. Her body moves instinctively, taking slow, cautious steps forward. She hesitates, the door handle still in her grasp. Could she really face what's inside? Could she handle what she might find? The moan grows louder, mixed with soft, rustling sounds. It's unmistakable now. Ununice's heart races as the dread she's been trying to suppress takes root. Every fiber of her being screams for her to turn around, to walk away, to pretend this never happened. But then something else settles within her. It's not just fear anymore. It's something stronger, something deeper. Her training as a sheriff compels her to act, to investigate, to confront the unknown, no matter how painful. She had faced criminals, violence, the worst that Oakwood had to offer. But this is different. This is personal. This is her life. Ununice exhales sharply and takes another step forward. The door creaks loudly, almost as if it's inviting her in. The noise from within grows stronger still, and in that moment, it hits her. Her whole life could change in the span of a single breath. The whispers that seemed like nothing but idle chatter are now truths she can no longer ignore. Each word, each rumor, now feels like a slap in the face. She can feel it now, rising in her throat, a bitter taste of dread and anger mixed. Her stomach twists, a knot tightening around her gut. She could stop now, walk away, leave this all behind. But she knows that if she doesn't face it now, she'll never be able to live with herself. She'll never be able to ignore the question that will haunt her forever. What is going on inside this house? A sudden realization strikes her like a blow. I have to know. I have to face this. With a shaky breath, Ununice turns a handle. The door creaks open further, and the sound from within fill the air, louder now. The music swells as the suspense hits a fever pitch. Ununice steps inside, her boots echoing in the empty hall. Every part of her wants to bolt, to run out into the night and forget this ever happened. But she doesn't. She moves forward, each step bringing her closer to the truth, to the painful reality that may very well shatter everything she's ever believed in. She is the sheriff of Oakwood. Nothing scares her. But this is beyond anything she's prepared for. And as she moves closer to the source of the noise, the door creaks open with a slow, deliberate motion, the sound piercing the silence that had enveloped Ununice for what seemed like an eternity. Her heart is racing, her breath shallow. The tension that has been building up inside her since the moment she stepped through her front door intensifies with each passing second. Her hand trembles on the door handle, her body rigid, as she steers herself toward the truth, the unknown. But nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to see. In the dim light of the room, she steps across the threshold, and there it is, the sight she never thought she'd witness, the betrayal too much to comprehend in one overwhelming instant. There, tangled in the sheets of her own bed, is Caleb, her husband, her partner, the man she trusted with her heart. But it's not just Caleb. No, there, wrapped in the same bed, is Gladys, her mother, the woman who raised her, taught her right from wrong, the woman she had loved and respected all her life. Ununice's mind goes blank. Her pulse thrums in her ears, drowning out everything else. Time slows, stretches, until the room seems to exist in some kind of suspended animation. It's as if the entire world is frozen, and in that frozen moment, Ununice can't breathe, can't move. Her legs feel like they're made of lead, her body locked in place as her mind scrambles to make sense of the impossible scene before her. The room, usually so familiar, is now alien, a space that feels dark and foreign. The sheets are tangled, limbs entwined in a way that no amount of explanation could ever undo. The betrayal is profound, so deep that it cuts right through the fabric of her reality. The world she thought she knew, her marriage, her family, her place in this town, seems to collapse in on itself, as if everything was nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. She blinks. Try and make the scene before her shift. Try to will it into something more reasonable, more real, but it doesn't change. The faces staring back at her are the same faces she's loved and trusted. Caleb, her husband, looks up in shock. His eyes widen, his pupils dilating as he realizes that the woman he thought he could deceive is standing in the doorway. But there is no guilt, no remorse in his expression, only raw panic. And then there's Gladys, her mother, the woman who had been everything to her. Their eyes meet, and for a fleeting second, Ununice sees the terror in her mother's eyes. She sees the shock, the realization that, in this moment, everything she had known was about to come crumbling down. Gladys stares back at her daughter, trying desperately to cover herself, but it's too late. The damage has been done. There are no words that can undo the pain of this discovery. The room is silent. Ununice is still. Everything is still. The only sound that fills the air is the pounding of her heart, as loud as thunder in her chest. The seconds stretch into an eternity. It's a moment that will never leave her. A moment so crushing that it etches itself into the very marrow of her bones. Her hands shake as she grips the doorframe, trying to steady herself. But her mind races, unable to comprehend what she is seeing. How could this happen? How could these two people, the one she trusted most in the world, betray her in the most intimate and painful way possible? And then, as if in slow motion, it happens. Gladys's eyes, those familiar brown eyes, slowly drift upward, meeting her daughter's gaze. It's as if she's just realizing that the world, as she knows it, has come to an end. In her eyes, there's nothing but horror and shame. The kind of shame that can never be erased. The kind that brands a person forever. And then Caleb, still frozen in disbelief, lifts his head and his gaze meets Ununice. His face, once filled with affection and love, now mirrors the same horror. But it's different. His eyes are wide with panic, guilt, and something else, a deep primal fear. His lips tremble, and for a moment, it seems like he might speak. But the words don't come. No apology, no explanation. Only silence. Ununice stands there, paralyzed. Her mind is screaming, her body trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. The silence that follows is suffocating. It wraps around her like a vice, constricting her chest. In the darkness of that room, in that moment of painful clarity, Ununice realizes that nothing, not one thing, will ever be the same again. For a heartbeat, everything is suspended in a void. The world outside her window continues, distant and indifferent, while inside her own home, her life unravels before her eyes. The camera focuses on Ununice's face, her expression unreadable as the room spins around her. She is trapped in her own shock, unable to move, to act, to speak. The betrayal is too deep, too profound, and it is too much to process in one breath. The silence feels like an eternity. But then, the first crack breaks the stillness. Ununice. Caleb's voice is barely a whisper, trembling with fear and regret. But it's too late for words. Too late for excuses. Too late for anything. The camera zooms in on her face, capturing the raw emotions playing across her features. Disbelief, rage, heartbreak. Her body shakes as the realization sinks in, and a surge of anger rises up from deep within her. She wants to scream, to yell, to demand an explanation, but no words come. Only silence and the sound of her breath, ragged and shallow. It's then that she feels it. Her instincts, the cop inside her, the overwhelming urge to confront the truth, to demand justice of betrayal she's just witnessed. But even as that desire swells inside her, a heavy weight settles in her chest. She's no longer in control. The truth has already been exposed, and it's more painful than she could have ever imagined. The room remains still as Ununice stands in the doorway, her eyes locked on the two people who had just shattered everything she held dear. The silence is deafening. Ununice's breath catches in her chest as the world around her narrows to a singular focus. Her body trembles, not from the cold, but from the uncontainable rage burning through her veins. The sight before her, Caleb, her husband, her partner, entwined in betrayal with her mother, Gladys, has shattered something deep inside her. She can no longer hold it in. The control she had carefully maintained over her emotions, her life, is slipping away in a flood of violent energy. Without warning, she moves. Her legs propel her forward, as if someone else is guiding her. In a single, swift motion, Ununice charges toward the bed, her fists raised, her voice a guttural cry of fury. The camera cuts in rapid succession, shifting between the blurred chaos of her movement and the frozen expressions of the people who had once been her closest. Her hands shake uncontrollably as she swings, a blur of raw anger. She doesn't recognize the sounds coming from her throat. Half scream, half sob, a mixture of grief and fury. How could they do this to me? How could they betray me like this? The camera zooms in on Caleb's face, his eyes wide with panic. His mouth opens as if to speak, but no words come out. His body tenses, but he doesn't move fast enough. He's paralyzed by the weight of his guilt, trapped by the unspoken knowledge that this moment, this destruction, is of his making. His face twists, caught between fear and remorse. No longer the man she married, but strange in the bed she had shared with him. Gladys, too, is frozen in place, her eyes wide with terror. For the first time in Ununice's life, her mother's face isn't a picture of strength. It is the face of someone who knows they've crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. Gladys's hands tremble as she tries to pull away, but she can't move fast enough. Ununice's fury has already consumed her, and there is no escaping it. Ununice's fists land with a crack, the sound sharp and brutal. Caleb flinches as her punches come fast and unrelenting. His hands try to shield himself, but they are useless. Each blow is a statement, each one a release of all the pain and disappointment that has been building up over the years, hidden behind the walls of their marriage. And then, just as the world seems to pulse with violence and rage, Ununice locks her gaze onto Gladys, her mother, the woman who had taught her so much, who had been her rock. The anger inside her twists. The betrayal is not just about Caleb. It's about everything. The years of silent power dynamics. The years of being overlooked, underestimated, and left to pick up the pieces. The years of waiting for something more, only to realize it was never there. Her body moves on its own. A surge of primal energy takes control. With no conscious thought, Ununice's face is suddenly inches from her mother's. She reaches forward, and in one swift, unthinking motion, her teeth sink into Gladys's lip. The room is filled with the sound of a horrified gasp. Gladys's scream splitting the air. The metallic taste of blood fills Ununice's mouth, the sharpness of it grounding her in the moment. She pulls back, the taste lingering, and for just a second, the room falls into a stunned silence. It's not just a bite. It's an act so raw, so animalistic, that it echoes louder than anything she has ever done before. Ununice stands over her mother, her chest heaving, her body trembling. She's disoriented, the chaos around her blurring. Her mind is a whirlpool of confusion, rage, and disbelief. She has crossed a line. There's no turning back now. There's no repair to the damage she's caused. The violence unleashed in that moment has fractured something deep inside her, and deep inside the two people who had once been her entire world. The camera lingers on Gladys's face as she recoils from pain. Blood stains her lips, her eyes wide with fear, and something worse, regret. The mother Ununice had trusted is now the face of a profound betrayal, and Ununice can see in her eyes. She had been complicit in this, too, but it's Caleb's face that haunts her most. His eyes don't look like the man she had loved. They look like a man broken, caught in the whirlwind of the destruction he helped create. His body trembles as he tries to crawl away from the chaos, his expression desperate. Ununice is no longer sure what she's feeling. The rage that propelled her has now turned to confusion. This is not the person she thought she was, not the woman she wanted to be. The storm inside her, once so powerful, now feels hollow. She can barely breathe as the weight of her actions settles into her chest. But there's no time to stop, no time to think. The silence that follows is more deafening than the violence that came before. Ununice stands there, blood still on her hands, her body still shaking. And then, as if from a great distance, she hears the sirens. Cliffhanger. The sound of approaching sirens grows louder, bringing the chaos of reality rushing back. Ununice's eyes widen, her pulse quickening as the consequences of her actions become all too real. She looks at Caleb, her breath ragged, her vision swimming with the weight of what's coming. What happens now? What will she do? The screen fades to black, leaving the answer hanging in the air, unanswered. The sound of sirens wails in the distance, a sharp, unsettling noise that pierces through the fragile silence of the room. Ununice can hear them growing louder, approaching with terrifying speed. Each pulse of the siren echoes in her chest like a drumbeat, reminding her of the inevitable fate she's about to face. Her breathing is ragged, shallow, as the weight of her actions settles in. Her hands are stained with blood, her own, Gladys's, Caleb's, but she can't seem to wipe away the images that fill her mind. The rage that had propelled her into storm now recedes, leaving a hollow emptiness in its wake. It's replaced by something worse, something deeper, regret. Ununice presses her shaking hands to her face, trying to steady her breath, but it's no use. The gravity of what she's done is sinking in faster than she can comprehend. Her eyes flicker toward Caleb, his face still pale and crumpled on the floor, his body twitching slightly as he regains consciousness. Gladys lies beside him, blood staining her lip, her eyes wide with disbelief. Ununice looks at them both, the two people she trusted more than anyone else, and her stomach churns. She has torn apart the fabric of her own life, and nothing will ever make it right. The door suddenly bursts open, and her world shifts once again. The air is thick with the presence of law enforcement. The blue and red lights cut through the room, casting chaotic shadows against the walls. The officers who step inside are strangers now, strangers who no longer see her as their sheriff, as the woman they had trusted to protect this town. They see her as a criminal. The realization hits her hard. The same officers who worked alongside her, who had supported her through thick and thin, now stand frozen in the doorway, their faces a mixture of disbelief and shock. There's no question in their eyes. They're not here to help her. They're here to arrest her. Her knees feel weak, the adrenaline that once surged through her now evaporating. Her head spins, but she doesn't take her eyes off them. The moment their gaze lands on her, Ununice feels a sense of finality wash over her. She's no longer the sheriff, no longer protector. She's just another suspect in a broken system, a woman who has lost everything. Sheriff Blackburn, one of the officers, finally speaks, his voice low and hesitant, like he doesn't quite believe the words he's about to say. "You're under arrest for assault." His words hang in the air like a thunderclap, loud and deafening. She opens her mouth, but no words come out. She wants to scream, to tell them this isn't her fault. She wants to say something, anything, to make them understand what led her here. But the weight of her own actions smothers the words before they can escape. Another officer moves toward her, his expression grim, his hand reaching for her wrists. The cold steel of the handcuffs feels like an eternity as they click shut around her wrists. The finality of the moment hits her like a physical blow. She stumbles backward, her legs unable to support her weight, and her body shakes violently. The camera lingers on her shaking hands. One strong, one steady, now trembling under the weight of her own choices. The contrast is sharp. Ununice had been a figure of authority, a woman who had commanded respect. But now, she is reduced to nothing. Her life, her career, her marriage, all of it is slipping through her fingers, and there's nothing she can do to stop it. The officers step back, watching her with a mix of pity and disbelief. They had never expected this. No one had. Oakwood's first female sheriff, the woman who had upheld the law for so long, is now the woman who has shattered it. Her eyes meet Caleb's for a brief moment, and in his expression, she sees the weight of her own destruction. There's no remorse in his face, just shame and fear. He's broken, too, But Ununice doesn't know how to feel about that anymore. She doesn't know if she's angry at him, at her mother, or at herself. All she knows is that this is the end of the road. The officers begin to lead her out of the room, each step she takes making the distance between her and her old life grow wider. As they move toward the door, her legs buckle beneath her, and she's forced to lean on one of the officers for support. The cold metal of the cuffs digs into her skin, a constant reminder of how far she's fallen. Outside, the night air is crisp, cutting through her like a blade. The flashing lights of the squad car burn her eyes as she's shoved into backseat, her world spinning faster than she can process. The officers close the door, and Ununice is left alone in the darkness, a prisoner of her own making. As the car pulls away, the camera lingers on Ununice's face through the barred window. Her eyes, once full of determination, are now hollow, empty. She is no longer the woman she once was. She is a woman whose life has been taken from her, whose future is uncertain. Fades to black. Ununice's world is reduced to cold, unforgiving steel. The dim fluorescent light above her flickers, casting an eerie glow over her figure as she sits on the hard, uncomfortable bench of the holding cell. The hum of the lights and the distant sounds of footsteps and murmurs from outside the bars are the only things that fill the silence. Her eyes are hollow, her expression one of disbelief as she stares at the floor, trying to process everything that has happened. For the first time in her life, she feels completely powerless. She has always been in control. Her career, her marriage, her life in Oakwood. But now, all of it is slipping away like sand through her fingers. The irony is almost too much to bear. She fought for justice her entire life, stood as a sheriff, a symbol of law and order in the community, only to see that very law collapse around her. How did it come to this? The thought echoes in her mind, but there are no answers. There's nothing but the cold, sterile walls of the cell and the weight of the decision she's made. The image of Caleb and Gladys, their faces full of terror and guilt, plays on an endless loop in her head. And then there's the sound, the sickening sound of her own voice screaming in that moment of pure, unrelenting rage. Her heart aches with regret, but it's too late now. There's no turning back. Her hands tremble as they rest on her lap. She can feel the rough edges of the handcuffs on her wrists, a constant reminder of how far she's fallen. The handcuffs that once only symbolized justice now symbolize her defeat. Her chest tightens as the air grows thicker, the weight of her own thoughts pressing down on her. Outside the holding cell, the atmosphere at the police station is tense. Whispers travel like wildfire, growing louder with every passing minute. Her colleagues, the men and women she had worked beside for years, are now divided. Some stand in silence, processing the shocking turn of events. Others exchange hushed words, their faces twisted with disbelief and judgment. "I never saw this coming," one officer murmurs, his voice barely audible over the hum of the station. His eyes dart toward the holding cell, where Ununice's figure is barely visible through the bars. She was the one we looked up to. Now look at her. Another officer shakes his head, his tone full of disappointment. But it's not just shock in their eyes. There's a deep sadness in some of their faces, a sympathy that is painful to witness. These were the people who had trusted her, followed her lead. Now, they see only a broken woman behind bars. The camera cuts between these reactions, showing the mixed emotions of her fellow officers. Some are disgusted by the betrayal, some are heartbroken, and a few stand frozen in a state of shock, unable to process the full scope of what has transpired. The station, once a place of camaraderie and respect, has become a battleground of whispers, gossip, and unspoken words. Inside the cell, Ununice sits motionless, her face ashen. Her mind races, but her body is exhausted, drained from the emotional turmoil of the past few hours. Her eyes, bloodshot from lack of sleep and the flood of emotions crashing over her, stare at nothing. The harsh reality of her situation is becoming all too... The thought lingers, gnawing at her, as she stares at the empty space in front of her. She can hear muffled voices through the walls, the sound of officers moving through the station. Their conversations are indistinct, but the weight of their judgment is tangible. Every word they speak feels like a nail in her coffin. The camera zooms in on her face, raw, exposed. Her eyes glisten with unshed tears, a mixture of rage, guilt, and disbelief. How did this happen? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. Her chest heaves with the weight of her emotions. She is a woman who has lost everything. Her badge, her trust, her marriage, her identity. All of it has been ripped away in a single moment of violence. The camera stays on her face as a tear escapes, slowly tracing the path down her cheek. It's not just a tear of sorrow, but of resignation. She knows this is just the beginning. The media will be all over this. The public will have their say. The small town of Oakwood, once a place where she felt in control, will now see her as a villain. The woman who betrayed everything she stood for. Her breathing hitches, and for a moment, her mind flashes back to betrayal. The image of Caleb and Gladys intertwined in her bed, the look of terror in her eyes as they saw her standing there, shattered. But even now, as her rage starts to cool, she can't help but wonder if they would have ever told her the truth. If they had ever planned to be honest with her. Would it have ever come to this? The camera lingers on her face, capturing the quiet storm of emotions. Her eyes narrow slightly as she takes in the full weight of her situation. The uncertainty of what comes next, the fear of the consequences, the feeling that her entire life isn't upended in a matter of hours. All of it is swirling inside her, threatening to overwhelm her. And then in the distance, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaches. She knows it's only a matter of time before someone comes for her. But who? A lawyer? A detective? Or the cold, indifferent hand of justice itself? Or has she already lost everything for good? Oakwood, once a quaint and peaceful town nestled in the heart of Michigan, has transformed overnight. What was once a close-knit community where everyone knew each other's names and secrets were rarely spoken aloud is now drowning in a media storm. The peaceful streets that had greeted Sheriff Ununice Blackburn every morning are now lined with news vans and flashing lights. Reporters swarm the town like vultures, eager to report every sordid detail of the scandal that has rocked this small town to its core. The serene atmosphere is now overwhelmed by the chaos of flashing lights and urgent whispers. Every inch of Oakwood is under scrutiny. Every person is a suspect in the eyes of the public. And no one is immune from a flood of judgment pouring in from all corners. Inside the town, the fallout is felt at every corner. The camera zooms in on the residents of Oakwood, each person processing the shock in their own way. In one corner of the town square, a group of women gathers, some with their hands clasped in prayer, others with heads bowed. Their voices are hushed, their eyes darting around nervously, whispering prayers for the woman who was once their sheriff. Ununice's fall has hit them hard. She was a symbol of justice, their protector, a figure they looked up to. But across the street, in stark contrast, the judgment is as loud as the media frenzy itself. A group of men stand gathered around a parked truck, shaking their heads in disbelief, their faces twisted with disgust. I always knew something wasn't right with that woman. Look where it got us. One man mutters, glancing over at the other. We trusted her. She was supposed to protect this town, not tear it apart. The tension in Oakwood is palpable, thick in the air. Some still hold on to hope, praying for Ununice's redemption, while others have already turned their backs, condemning her for what they believe is an unforgivable betrayal. The deep divide between sympathy and judgment is enough to tear the town apart, and the camera doesn't shy away from showing the raw emotions that swirl through the community. But the true depth of the scandal doesn't end with Ununice's arrest. The camera cuts to the local diner, where the familiar hum of small-town life has been replaced by sharp whispers and heated discussions. The booths, once filled with friendly chatter, are now crowded with gossiping townsfolk, all eager to share their own version of what happened. The cameras focus on one table in particular, where a group of regulars huddle over coffee, their voices low but urgent. I heard something a while back, something that makes all this make sense. A man leans in, his voice barely above a whisper, as the others strain to listen. Some folks say this wasn't just a one-time thing. The way Caleb was acting, the way Gladys looked at her, had been brewing for years. The words hang in the air, heavy with implication. The camera lingers on the faces of people around the table, eyes widening, mouths dropping open in shock. The tension grows, and the camera cuts to the faces of other patrons in the diner, who listen in, intrigued and horrified by what they've just heard. Brewing for years? One of the women at the table asks, voice quivering, "What do you mean? What aren't they telling us?" The man leans back in his chair, his fingers tapping the table as he looks around, making sure no one is listening. "I'm telling you, it wasn't just about that night. They were always too close, too secretive, hiding something. Everyone saw it, but no one said anything. And now look where we are." The camera zooms in on the faces of the diners, shocked, disturbed, their minds racing to piece together what's been left unsaid. The quiet hum of conversation dies down as the weight of the conversation settles over them. What other secrets are hiding beneath the surface of this small town? What else has been concealed behind the closed doors of Oakwood, where everyone knows everyone's business, except for the things they choose not to see? The camera lingers on the man's cryptic words as the atmosphere in the diner thickens. Could the scandal go deeper than anyone imagined? Was Ununice fall the result of a betrayal years in the making? The scene fades, leaving the audience hanging on that thread of mystery. The truth is just out of reach, and the quiet whispers of the townspeople have only fueled the fire. Was there something more to the story than just what had been revealed in the media? What had been brewing under the surface all this time? The viewers are left with burning questions that will only grow as the fallout from Ununice's arrest continues to unfold. The room is dim, the only light coming from the flickering television, casting long shadows over the furniture. Gladys sits alone in her living room, her swollen lips still raw and bruised, a painful reminder of the chaos she has unleashed. The harsh light reveals the tear stains on her cheeks, tears she hasn't allowed herself to shed until now. The silence around her is deafening, the stillness only broken by the distant hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock. Her hand gingerly touches her lip, wincing at the pain, but it's the emotional wound that stings the most. The affair with Caleb, an impulsive decision driven by feelings she hadn't even fully understood at the time, had given her a fleeting sense of power. It made her feel alive again. She felt desirable, needed, in control. For a brief moment, she was no longer the woman who had been overshadowed by her successful daughter, the woman who had watched from the sidelines as Ununice rose to become Oakwood's first female sheriff. For once, she was the one being admired, being pursued. But now, in the aftermath, it all feels so hollow. Gladys's mind races as she stares at the empty space in front of her, her thoughts spiraling. What have I done? The affair had promised her something she hadn't even realized she craved: attention, validation, and a break from the weight of living in Ununice's shadow. But in that single reckless act, she has lost everything that truly mattered. Her daughter, her sense of identity, the trust that had taken years to build. All of it is gone, destroyed in a moment of selfishness. A dark realization settles over her like a heavy fog. Is this really worth it? The fleeting thrill, the rush of feeling desired, now feels cheap, meaningless, in light of the devastation it's caused. Ununice's face flashes before her eyes. Her daughter, the one person she had loved and cared for above all else. The look of horror in Ununice's eyes as she stood in the doorway, witnessing the betrayal, is a memory Gladys will never be able to shake. The camera lingers on Gladys's face as she wrestles with her emotions. Her eyes are wide, searching for answers in the shadows of the room, but none come. She knows she can never undo what she has done. There's no apology that will ever erase the pain she's caused. She has broken the most sacred bond of all, mother and daughter, and now she is left with nothing but regret. But even deeper than that, there's a nagging question that keeps gnawing at her. Was the affair truly about Caleb, or was it something else entirely? She sits back in the chair, her head spinning with conflicting emotions. The power she felt during the affair now feels like a bitter memory. What was once a brief escape from her own insecurities now feels like a mistake, a tragedy that has ruined everything she ever cared about. Was a sense of validation worth losing her relationship with her daughter? Was the brief pleasure worth the lifetime of guilt that will follow her from here on out? The camera zooms in on Gladys's conflicted face, capturing the rawness of her inner turmoil. Her eyes are clouded with doubt, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of loss. She has spent her entire life trying to fit into a role, trying to be the woman her daughter could look up to. But now, She realizes she is no longer that woman. She has become someone unrecognizable, someone she barely understands. The silence grows louder, the weight of her decision pressing down on her chest. The moments stretch on, each second feeling like an eternity. She shifts in her chair, as though trying to shake the feeling of being trapped in her own mind. Her hand moves to her swollen lip again, but this time the pain feels distant. The physical hurt is nothing compared to the emotional wound she now carries. What will happen now? The question lingers in the air, unanswered. What will Ununice do when she finds out the truth? Will she ever forgive her mother? Will she ever be able to look at Gladys the same way again? But even more pressing is the question of whether Gladys can forgive herself. Can she live with the choices she has made? Or will the weight of her actions continue to haunt her, eroding the fragile pieces of her life until there is nothing left? What will she do next? What will happen when the full consequences of her actions come to light? The mystery continues and the suspense builds, leaving viewers eagerly awaiting the next chapter in this tragic story. The story you just witnessed is far from over. The truth behind Ununice's fall, the betrayal that shattered everything she loved. This is a tale of consequences that'll leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty, trust, and redemption. But before you go, ask yourself this. What would you do if you were in her shoes? Could you survive the storm? If you're as captivated by Ununice's journey as we are, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This isn't just one story. We dive deep into real cases, the darkest twists, and shocking truths you won't hear anywhere else. Join the True Crime Echoes community and be part of this journey. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Let's break down the mysteries, one story at a time, together. And remember, comment below. What do you think Ununice should do next? Would you forgive her? Subscribe now and stay tuned for more gripping true crime.